Your new book is Outdoor Kids in an Inside World. What made you want to write this one?
Oh man, so it's funny because my oldest boy, I have 3 kids. My oldest boy turns 12 real soon here, and I've had the same agent for a million years, 20 some years, right?
Right.
And the minute my wife got pregnant with our first child, my agent's like, man, someday, you're gonna have to write a book about how you bring in today's world, right? Like how you bring a kid up, kind of like the way you were brought up, because that shit's becoming hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And it was kind of in one ear and out the other at the time. I didn't really think too much about it because I hadn't done any parenting yet. But I grew up, or I should say, when I had kids, I had a anxiety that I think a lot of my contemporaries have now, parents of young kids, about, how to give them that aspect of that sort of free roaming, muddy, kind of bloody upbringing that I had. I was brought up in rural Michigan. I mean, we had a neighbor right there, but we lived on a lake. We had tons of woods to roam around in. We could just take off with 22s on our bikes, and go. And we had really, when I say we, my brothers and I and our friends around us, we had just unfettered access to the outdoors and developed these really complex relationships to nature, to the outdoors, led us down various career paths, I mean, it was foundational, just the amount of time spent outside in terms of developing, all manner of characteristics that I think are important to develop. When I had kids, I lived in New York for some years, and my first kids were born there. My third kid was born in Seattle. We live in Montana now, but they've lived in some of the biggest urban areas there are.
Sure.
And I felt a ton of anxiety and apprehension about how I was going to give them that life that I had. And there's this American ideal, that you do better by your kids than what was done by you, right? And people subscribe to that idea. And I was able to achieve that in a lot of ways. But man, I was worried about how do you recreate that set of experiences? And
it's what do you mean by better? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because exactly. I would say the way I would prefer the way I grew up with certain changes to just looking at an iPad 4 inches from my face all the time, right? I think
exactly. But some people measure it right at whatever access to education, access to better healthcare, whatever it is, or is it that you just got to run around in the woods all the time,
right?
And there's different versions of better. So that's what led me down to this. I'm 12 years into it now, of really be committing myself to raising, outdoor kids, right? To have that same sophisticated, complicated relationship to nature and the outdoors that I did. And so it's really, a book I was kind of writing about my experiences, and particularly because so many people reach out to me and other people I work with about these questions, when is it okay to introduce a kid to shooting firearms? When is it okay what happens if a little kid watches a deer die, right? Are you going to screw him up for the rest of his life? How do you get everybody out the door? Why do they always lose their mittens, right? All these things that I've been living now for a long time. And so I thought it was time to do that book for people who are suffering those same sets of questions that I struggled with for so many years.
Yeah, and I'm a father myself, and I struggle with the same thing of how much screen time they can have as far as iPads go versus playing outdoors. Dan and I live in Texas, and for example, my kid is off today. There's some Founders Day for the city of Dripping Springs here in Texas. There's a festival and all this other stuff, which is amazing, and we're all going to it, but he's off of school. When I've got one in preschool, now that's optional. So, he's 8 years old, and he says, hey, I want Jagger to stay home. He's 3. And I was like, all right, great. You can stay home, but you're going to go outside and play today. You're not going to sit in front of an iPad all day. And, initially, you see their faces go down a little bit, and it's like, hey, it's beautiful outside. It's sunny. You have a pool. You have trees, woods. You can do all kinds of things. Go outside and play. And then, they went. But you've got to lay that groundwork down. Otherwise, they will sit inside all goddamn day and sit in front of, YouTube or GTA or whatever it is. But as a parent, part of you is like, or me, at least me, part of me is like, well, I don't want them to be behind with the rest of the world and their friends and everything else electronics-wise, because that is the future. That's where all of this is headed. So it's a difficult juggling act, trying to balance out how much time they should have on a screen versus how much time they should be out in the world itself. And then obviously COVID didn't help with any of this, because most kids were inside, and then other kids didn't want to go outside and play with the neighbors because they were worried about getting COVID and X, Y, and Z. And now that everybody's coming out of that, you got to sit back and say, okay, how much time is the right time? What number did you come up with as a parent yourself?
Oh man, this is something that, we fight about this in my house every single day. And you look like someone like here I am, I wrote this book and so someone might be like, well, how could he be suffering from this problem? He wrote a whole damn book about kids in the outdoors, raising outdoor kids. But it's like, I don't have every answer. We fight about screen time every single day. And to get into the idea of, you brought up like just how much COVID affected us. In fact, I wrote a chapter of this book while I had COVID. As soon as the kids were not in school, like they pulled everybody out of school, we went out and bought them all iPads, right? Because they had to, like, they were downloading certain things and doing certain lessons. So like iPads became very much a part of the house. If you gave them, if at any point in time you told my kids, hey, just do whatever you'd like right now, like we don't care what you do right now, they would instinctively, absolutely go to that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
to go play games. So I have not been able to conquer that impulse. I have not gotten them into a position, I'd be lying if I said I did, where I conquered that impulse. But we have set like very strict parameters around it. And I hear all the time from people who say, well, my kids don't want to go outside. I can't get them to go outside. It's like, I don't ask my kids what they want to do.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I metaphorically, I should clarify, drag them by the ear to get them to go have the sets of experiences that I think they need to have to be the kind of adults I would like them to become. And oftentimes I'll be taking them out ice fishing or whatever to go freeze their ass outside. And they're like, well, I don't understand why we got to go do this. I'll say, it's hard for me to explain. One reason would be that you will get to hang out with cooler people when you grow up. I know you don't appreciate that now, but that will be a result of learning the skill set and behaviors that you're going to pick up by like being outside and being uncomfortable being outside.
Well, the important part about ice fishing especially is you have to know all the mechanics of it so you can get shit housed while you're doing it. Right.
Exactly.
Like you have to be able to perform all those tasks 6 to 8 beers deep.
Yes.
That's what I have to tell my kids. I'd be like, listen, right now you got to learn how to do this so that later you can overlay. Drunkenness on top of this and still perform. So it's best if you master this skill set now while you're not 21 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's like it's a major thing, and I just have wrangled them and forced them into a lot of circumstances. And that's a lot of things I talk about in the book too, is, there's a big focus we have a big focus in our household on gardening. We have a big focus in our household on like foraging wild foods, like going out and picking mushrooms and stuff. We eat at home. We eat all wild game at home. The only meat we eat at home is wild game. So we have a major focus on securing food and like disciplines, activities that keep them very rooted in something that, not the technology is not real, but something that's more constant and more real.